I'll use the microphone. Can you hear me all right? Good morning and almost good afternoon, everyone. I'm Martha Mathews Libster. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, in the United States of America. And I'm really grateful to be asked to speak to you today about some important cultural diplomacy work that we've been doing for over 10 years. And as our previous speaker so eloquently described, how emotionally draining and challenging and just important the work can be, but at the same time can be a big challenge. So I thank her for that and setting kind of the foundation for what we're going to talk about, which has to do with health, something that we all maybe sometimes take for granted, some things we like. In 2003, there was actually a conference in Washington, D.C. on cancer care. One of the keynote speeches was given by a world-renowned neurosurgeon from America. His name is Dr. Ben Carson, for those of you who live here. He had been conducting research in a laboratory at the National Institutes of Health, and he stuck his hand with a needle that contained cancer cells. And I actually heard him tell this story back in 2004. And I realized he was still alive, and yet he and his subsequent book recount the experience as life-threatening. Now, none of the medical scientists at our National Institutes of Health could actually help him, and he was dying. He and his wife found an old American herbal, which is a book about plant medicines used in self and family care, that mentioned red clover, or Trifolium pratense. It's a treatment for cancer, well known at least back to the 1940s in the American government, but back centuries in our traditions. The surgeon's wife purchased and prepared gallons of tea from a single herb. He drank it, and his symptoms related to the growth of cancer cells in his hand and his neck began to fade. He was careful, as any good medical scientist would have been, not to draw a direct cause and effect relationship between the red clover tea and his cancer symptom reduction. But he did note that it was a possible contributing factor, and later publicly discussed the plant's known history as a traditional cancer cure. He went on to tell the story that he developed prostate cancer years later and was helped with the use of supplements and skilled surgical care. His story is an example of the power of complementarity in healthcare, the cornerstone of cultural diplomacy in health and healing of persons, families, communities, or even nations. Complementarity has been defined by Niels Bohr as permitting mutual understanding and respect among diverse cultures and allowing for the unity of human knowledge. Cultural diplomacy in healthcare is an active expression of the sensitivity, understanding, and empathy one feels towards another's health beliefs and practices, and then expresses in health promotion and care. It differs from global health diplomacy, a term employed in international health, public health, and medical missionary areas. Global health diplomacy negotiation is positioned from one's country's cultural beliefs, values, traditions, and resources. While there is most certainly a time and a place for diplomacy that advocates a particular health-related view, such as when seeking control of infectious disease, cultural diplomacy in healthcare suggests a paradigmatic shift toward complementarity, demonstrated in an approach that fosters unity between all therapeutic relationships and access to all resources valued by communities for promoting health and healing. Capacity building in cultural diplomacy is of particular importance in today's global health community, in which migration has strong implications in the development of healthcare services, and healthcare providers take an active role as global citizens in decisions that cross national boundaries and borders. Complementarity serves as a general principle for negotiation within and among healthcare circles toward promotion of the possibility of pluralism in healthcare system design and sharing of knowledge and resources that in some instances can be life-saving as well as comforting to body, mind, and spirit. Attention to pluralism is a growing trend, particularly in religious studies. We have a pluralism project here at Harvard University in Massachusetts that focuses on religious interfaith development, and so this is a complement to that. Like religion, personal and community health practices and national health systems rest on belief. Understanding health belief is not only important to person-centered care, it's also the foundation of teaching, learning, and practicing the science and art of healing, as it is uniquely demonstrated within the professional cultures of medicine, nursing, and allied health. The cultural diplomacy model, which we created and started testing 10 years ago, and identifies 4 paradigms in healthcare as cultures: the biomedical, the traditional, complementary therapies, which we consider a subculture of the biomedical at this point, and self-care. When I spoke in 2004 at the World Health Organization on this subject, complementary therapies was still considered a very separate culture from biomedical, but now we have integrative medicine in Europe and in the United States and also in even Central South America, where it's actually become a subculture. Complementary therapies refers to practices that are not, quote, part of the country's own tradition or conventional medicine and are not fully integrated into the dominant healthcare system. And of course, that's really hard to define when you get down to the grassroots of implementing and operationalizing. What is it exactly? There's a lot of gray area. Complementary therapies practitioners are part of the larger community of healers accessed by the public as they engage in self-care. History demonstrates sociocultural tension, actually, between the 4 cultures, particularly in more industrialized nations that often allocate significant amounts of resources in the development of healthcare technologies valued in the biomedical culture. According to health belief models, people and communities make health decisions based on their perceived severity of illness and consequences, risks and benefits, perceived feasibility, health beliefs, and their actual experience. Attention to held values of cultural diplomacy in healthcare as complementarity and pluralism of beliefs and practices is a natural foundation for providing person-centered care that is culturally safe, as defined by our Maori nurses, and respects the health perceptions and decision-making capacity of all peoples. This is particularly important for those who hold traditional and indigenous health beliefs, most often marginalized when they come in contact with institutions such as hospitals, where their health practice and rituals may be misunderstood and even prohibited. Beliefs, practices, resources, and practitioners associated with traditional and indigenous healing, TIH, are frequently underrepresented in discussions related to healthcare systems. The complexities of health policies related to indigenous peoples are found to act as barriers to care when examined within the context of the historical, social, spiritual, and cultural components to well-being, leaving significant numbers of indigenous people in the Americas, for example, without access to conventional healthcare services. We call that health disparity. Yet even when conventional services are provided, they are typically grounded in a healthcare culture in which biomedical rather than traditional views of healing are dominant. In addition, the additional healers who are elders in their communities are wisdom keepers. And this is a picture of Lizzie Mitchell. I was with her 2 weeks ago in Mohawk Nation, where the 5 rivers come together. She's an indigenous wisdom keeper. This knowledge that she holds and many others is endangered and could be lost if not preserved in a manner that respects their cultural traditions. Publications, research, and education in cultural diplomacy and healthcare acknowledge and promote the inclusion of the contribution of traditional and indigenous healers. Diplomatic inclusion of TIH is congruent with the World Health Organization model for primary health care applied in healthcare systems around the globe, as well as Resolution WHA 4434 of the 44th World Health Assembly, which urged countries participating in the WHO to identify activities leading to cooperation between those providing traditional medicine and modern health care. Traditional healing is defined by the WHO as the sum total of knowledge, skill, and practices based on the therapies, beliefs, and experiences indigenous to different cultures, whether explicable or not, used in the maintenance of health as well as in prevention, diagnosis, improvement, and treatment of physical and mental illness. Traditional healers are most often taught by family and community members who are recognized as healers and keepers of the healing culture of their community. Traditional healers bring a centuries-old knowledge and wisdom of the experience of healthcare culture. Their understanding, beliefs, practices, and values are rooted in experience and ritual. The traditional paradigm includes indigenous knowledge systems firmly rooted in culture and history, such as traditional Chinese medicine, Native American medicine, Rangoa Maori, and Ayurveda. This slide shows children in Belize with Rosita Arvigo participating in a traditional Maya rainforest medicine camp. These children, many years ago when Rosita started this project, were not interested in their traditional medicine. They wanted only the pills from the United States. And so they can have both. That's the message. They can have both, but now they do. They do thanks to her work with Donnelly Hiopanti, who is now deceased. A WHO survey suggests that traditional healers remain the health providers for millions of people and are on the rise as a result of rekindled interest in whole person care. The report of 5 ARISTA conferences published by the Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society, of which I am a member, cited differing cultures, values, and beliefs requiring balance and integration of Western medicine and healthcare principles with more traditional approaches as one of the unique challenges that nurses face in being able to meet global health needs of the future. So, the Bamboo Bridge, an international community of partners created by nurses in 2006, has held global tea houses around the world to promote cultural diplomacy in healthcare and cross-fertilization of healing knowledge in partnership with medicinal plants. Tea houses include listening to elder stories of cultural traditions that root inspirations for new ways of healing in wisdom and experience that can meet the needs for healing in peoples in the present and in the future. Nurses often navigate between and among the 4 cultural paradigms when going through decision-making processes with people. They have historically been positioned to provide cultural diplomacy in healthcare because they're educated and practiced in multiple paradigms, though they may not talk about it openly. The ability to appreciate and acknowledge differing perspectives and cultural health traditions negates any unrealistic expectation that nurses are educated to be culturally competent when caring for clients of varying cultures. The practice of cultural diplomacy provides the framework for nurses and other healthcare practitioners to provide a care that is congruent with the client's worldview. An emphasis on the science, art, and practice of the elements of care are common to all paradigms, also is the focus of the Bamboo Bridge Global Tea House events. The Global Tea House provides a forum for cultural exchange of beliefs, practices, and creative solutions to tough problems in healthcare and other domains of caring community. Participants have the opportunity to join in the ritual of taking tea, and although I am white-faced and I do have European roots, we don't just take black tea from London. So people ask me that all the time. We actually formulate specifically with indigenous people in the local area and with our community members and come up with something very special for that event. This centuries-old tradition engages many varieties of plants. Can you name that one? That's Coffea arabica. May I introduce you to the plant that you wake up to in the morning in the United States? Coffee. Many people don't know the plants that they're imbibing on a routine basis. That's one of the things we teach children, is to recognize the plants that are in their pizza and in their cup or even in their soda, somewhere back a ways. When people of diverse health beliefs and healing practices come together and take a tea uniquely formulated by event hosts and participants, the results have been nothing short of inspirational. Cross-fertilization leads to greater ease in dialogue, building stronger, caring community, facilitating international peacemaking, and developing reciprocal relationships to focus on solving tough global health problems that challenge the health and well-being of children, youth, and their families. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe wrote of the experience and perception of the living world and its spiritual as well as material basis when he wrote, "In observing objects of nature, especially those that are alive, we often think The best way of gaining insight into the relationship between their inner nature and the effects they produce is to divide them into their constitutional parts. Such an approach may in fact bring us a long way toward our goal. In a word, those familiar with science can recall what chemistry and anatomy have contributed toward an understanding and overview of nature. But these attempts at division also produce many adverse effects when carried to an extreme. Thus, observation of nature is limitless, whether we make distinctions among the least particles or pursue the whole by following the trail far and wide. Scientific analysis and dividing into parts is an important way of knowing and healing. Complementarity that includes holistic views of health and healing also is important. Learning about the constituents of medicinal plants as well as the applications of the plant as a whole invites the formation of what we call integrative insight. That can be accessed in solving health problems and developing cure. In the spirit of cultural diplomacy, the purpose of the Global Tea House is to provide a safe space for teaching and learning that invites participation from all four paradigms rather than cultural conversion, even when discussing such topics as infectious disease. Culture clash is the result of people seeking to extend their influence through conversion and trying to convince others of the rightness of their views. During culture clash, polarization occurs in the relationship as one or both persons fear loss of power and control. Therefore, the express focus of the Global Tea Houses is on those in need of solutions for care and comfort. The framework for conducting the Global Tea House education event is the cultural diplomacy model that promotes cultivation of cultural diplomacy skill in health. For the past 10 years, we have been developing this with a dual focus on invitational learning and education and practice to build capacity in 3 skills: mindfulness, peacemaking communication, and solution-focused negotiation. The cultural diplomacy model mindfulness curriculum includes topics such as reflective practice, discernment, perception, health beliefs, habits, and pattern recognition. People learn to establish an environment for peacemaking communication through experiments in essence listening, caring communication, peacemaking, and through cultural immersions. The curriculum for building best practice through solution-focused negotiation includes modeling and role modeling practice theory, solution-focused counseling and coaching, reframing, and negotiation skill building. Last year, we had the pleasure of meeting Matthew Black Eagleman at the Parliament of World Religions that was held in Salt Lake City in the state of Utah, USA. One of the foci for the Parliament was indigenous belief. Matthew's presentations at the Parliament about his life and work were an inspiration. He and his wife, Linny, who's behind, honored our Bamboo Bridge partners and students with a ceremony for our graduates of our program. We still talk about the beauty, peace, and power that experience together. He is a spiritual elder among Native American peoples of different tribes and is an exemplar of the cultural diplomat in his work with the healing of youth and nations. And he's with us today.